I think it's quite simple. Just don't let your dog hang out with random dogs you don't know. So we're just gonna do similar to last time and just like bounce around from different comments or questions or things like that. One of them was, how do you avoid a dog fight? I think it's quite simple. Just don't let your dog hang out with random dogs you don't know.
Yes. Or if you're having inner household issues, getting to the bottom of that both dogs are likely a piece in that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people like to bring one dog to training and then they're like, oh, the other dog starts the fights. And you're like, well, I need the whole puzzle to be able to help you.
Yeah. And I think that most of the time it's situations where these dogs usually have lived together for a while. Very rarely, I think, do we get situations where they're like, I just got this brand new dog and my dogs are fighting. Yeah. It's usually like, oh, I've had these dogs for like 2 or 3 years and everything's been fine. Or I've had them for a few months even, or whatever. It's usually like some length of time before things go awry, which means that you had all that time to make them not go awry.
Yeah. Because it can be really easy upon first, like, greetings to see that they're fine with each other and get complacent and comfortable with your everyday life. That, like, oh, I can make their food together or I can do this. And then it just takes, like, one time where they start fighting. And then likely once that first fight happens, it opens Pandora's box. And they're like, that's an option. And that kind of felt good. So they're more inclined to repeat that fight. Rarely are fights just happen once and they never happen again. Like, if they happen once, they generally happen again. You know, unless we change something.
Something you just said I find really interesting because people would probably argue with you tooth and nail on it, where you said that like, oh, and it kind of felt good. People hate the idea that dogs like being aggressive.
Yes.
They hate to think about that. They're like, oh, no dog wants to be aggressive, or they're obviously struggling if they're showing aggressive behaviors. And sure, there's some instances where like, a dog is like behaving aggressively because they are struggling or they're youthful or whatever. But like to say that aggression is not fulfilling to a predator is wild to me.
And that's why there are certain breeds that just love to jump into a fight that they have nothing to do with.
They love it.
And if you truly work with
dogs... They're
dogs...
like, finally!
Yeah, like, you know this is a truth that some dogs do like conflict. Some dogs go out of their way to create conflict. And some dogs just want to be in it when it starts. Because it does feel good. I
had a friend who had a, like... I'd say he's like American Bulldog mix. And he hated when people got in his face, as most American Bulldogs do. He found it very challenging. And I was literally in a room once and I was like bent over in a drawer getting something. He comes over, purposefully sits underneath of me. So he's like right close to my face and then starts growling at me. Tell me that dogs don't enjoy conflict or aggression at times. Yes. Like, he went out of his way to create conflict and to like antagonize. Yes. If he didn't want to have to do those behaviors, then he would have sat the fuck in the corner like he was in the beginning and not come over there. Yeah.
I think people forget truly that dogs are animals. And they like to think of them as like, this is my fur baby. Just a little pibble. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
It's an animal.
I agree with you. One of the comments was like, how I didn't see the Wicked movie. I literally couldn't give two shits about Wicked. I'm sorry. But someone left a comment and was like, in the Wicked movie, they're like anthropomorphize all the animals, I guess. And they're like, hate the humans and they whatever. I don't know. I literally don't know the story. Despite being a theater kid. That's crazy, right? But, and they were like, do you think that movies like that contribute to the way people view animals? And Absolutely. Like, unfortunately, I think so, which is crazy to me because they're literally in Oz. They're in like a fucking fantasy world, Shiz University. I don't know where in the world you would take this weird fantasy world and then extrapolate. The only thing that's real about it is that animals have feelings. Like that's a little unhinged and
Yes.
insane. But I do think people do that.
Yeah. And there's like obviously horrible things happening around the world, and people like see a sad dog story and they're like,
Yeah, the whole website of like, but does the dog die? Like in movies, you'll watch a movie of like people getting like shredded and annihilated, and you're like, but what about the doggy?
Yeah. Did he get hurt?
Did he get hurt? So weird, guys.
It is.
Really weird.
The people don't want to hear that.
No, they don't. Yeah, it's not, listen, it's not bad to have empathy or compassion for animals dying. The problem is that when you have zero for humans, that's the weird part. When the contrast is there of like, I don't care about humans, but the dogs, you know, if you care about everyone, that's great.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can be that way.
Yeah. I mean, human life should come first.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and back to the dogs fighting. We went on a nice little tangent there. Obviously in the house, you need to be like, you can't just like go get a new dog willy-nilly and just like throw it in and expect that everything's going to be fine. Whether you're getting like a new puppy or a random rescue dog or whatever. You have to be very intentional about how you introduce or add a dog to your household. That's the first problem. And then when you're talking about like your dog socializing maybe throughout the world, how to avoid a dog fight, don't let them meet dogs that you don't know.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Don't have on-leash greetings. Do your socialization without creating conflict by adding food, toys, or affection. And people, like, that's the one thing that they cannot grasp is their affection is a resource as well. And that it could cause a huge fight. Like, if you're petting one dog and then the other dog at the same time, you're like, look how cute.
Yeah. Well, and someone even asked, like, I need to trust, or mentioned in the comments that they're like, I need to trust my dog more socially or how to trust my dog socially. I don't know your dog, and maybe you do need to trust that your dog is going to handle things well socially. There are plenty of dogs that I don't trust socially.
No.
And in specific certain situations, like my dog Lumos, I trust him to be with dogs he knows and that I've taken the time to introduce him with. And then I trust him to be with female dogs that he doesn't know. He cannot be with puppies. I don't trust him with puppies, and I don't trust him with male dogs.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like he's earned that distrust.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to be like, oh, I trust him to make the right decisions. Like, I know his personality. He is very low tolerance. His tolerance has increased over the years, and he's done better with younger dogs. But for the most part, puppies are really obnoxious to him, and he's not the adult dog who's going to tolerate puppy behavior and give like an appropriate correction. If he gives a dog a correction, they're going to be bleeding afterwards. And then with male dogs, he's extremely dominant. So as soon as he engages with a male dog, he's immediately like, so you want to fight? Or...
And there's just dogs that have that personality and that trait. And it's not about trusting your dog. Because I think like trust is a human emotion. Like, we can never really trust an animal, you could argue. Like, you can't trust something that's in it for itself. Like, they're not doing things to please you.
No.
They're doing things because their biology is telling them to, or it feels good to them.
Yeah.
And they're always going to pick what feels good, you know?
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, the most that you can do with dog fights or to avoid them is avoid situations that create more risk than benefit. And then if you're putting your dog in a situation to socialize with a dog you know or whatever, then being confident that that is an appropriate dog that you think they're going to mesh well with and get along with. And then if you don't, and you're just starting to try to figure out who your dog is socially, using safety precautions like muzzles or a long line attached to him dragging that you can grab, making sure that you're putting him with dogs that you know are socially stable if you're not confident your dog is, all of those different factors. Knowing how to break up a dog fight
That's a big one.
is an extremly valuable skill that alarmingly not a lot of people know how to do.
Yeah, there's some weird methods out there. The wheelbarrow.
The wheelbarrow is like only gonna work if they're not actually like biting each other.
Yeah.
Like if it's like a scuffle and like no one has actually connected. Like if a dog is not latched onto another dog, I suppose the wheelbarrow method is fine, because if you reach in where no one's connected and there's just mouths and teeth flying everywhere, you're probably going to get bit.
Yeah.
So in those instances, like, yes, grab the back legs and drag the dog out of there. And hopefully you have somebody else there with you that you can have them do the same thing. But for the most part, if a dog is an actual dog fight where there's like connections being made and someone is latched onto someone, you can't do that, or you're just going to rip and tear everything even more.
Yeah. And like looking at like if a dog fight is happening within your household, like looking at what the cause could be. I just had a client that I'm working with now, and it was the weirdest thing, like prepping the dog food, which is very common, and the dogs being in close quarters in the kitchen would set one of their dogs off to attack.
Yeah.
Once the food was delivered, there's no issue. There's no issue with like the bowls or going over to anybody's bowl. It was specifically when she got the bowls out and she was making the dinner.
It was like the buildup of the excitement of it.
So we worked extensively on like that kind of situation, and it's not something that I would feel comfortable with clients doing on their own and just doing like a willy-nilly feeding routine. So we definitely worked command-wise with that, and that avoided a lot of conflict for her.
And two, I think that it's useful to know like what to do if you have multiple dogs living in the same house and there are periods of time where there's only one human present. You need to know how to break up a dog fight with one person there. Yeah. Because that is exponentially more difficult than when you have multiple people, because if you get one dog out, you have one dog who potentially is going to continue to keep re-engaging because you only have control of one dog. Yeah. And I have a client who has a lot of trauma from her two dogs fighting, had multiple fights, and the fights only happen when she's generally there by herself. And so one of the things I told her was, obviously we're on the path of no more fights, but I said, if something were to happen, I said, take a deep breath. Cause like getting chaos and like getting chaotic and crazy and screaming and yelling and running around and grabbing things is like not going to work. Yeah. So allow yourself to have like 5 seconds to be like, oh my gosh, they're fighting. What do I need to do?
And not react absolutely immediately, and like think about
what is and so something I've recommended to people is get one of your slip leads, attach it to the hips and the rear end, like wrap it around the belly of one of the dogs and drag that dog to something you can tie them to and tie them to it and anchor them. So that dog is stuck now. Okay. Then go get your second dog and proceed to choke them off of the bite or whatever's happening, and then pull them away. And now you have a dog who's stuck because you took the time to anchor them. And now you've got the other dog that you've removed from the situation. Yeah. So you don't have an issue where you're like grabbing one dog and now the other dog's coming back, and then you're grabbing this dog and now this dog's coming back, and then
because there are some times that it goes on for a really long time.
Dog fights can last a very long time.
And they're traumatic.
Yes.
Very traumatic. Speaking from experience.
Yes. And it can be very dangerous as the human, especially dependent on what breeds are fighting, what your relationship is like with them and stuff like that, where there's a lot of unfortunately, like fatalities or maulings that happen of humans that were triggered by dogs fighting first. And then the humans try to intervene, and then it turns on them and they become the communal target at that point. So you have to be extremely careful. And if you don't, and this is another point, like if you feel like unsafe, like you are like, these dogs have tried to hurt me before, whatever. Don't intervene. Your safety has to come first over all of it. Like as sad as it is, if something like that is happening and you know your own safety is at risk, intervening on that, then don't. Yeah. At that point. Yeah. That would be even more traumatic than the other outcome.
I have small dogs, so it's not that I allow...
Just start kicking them?
Yeah. Not that I allow them, but they spar sometimes. I call it sparring. the Chihuahuas.
Oh, Chihuahuas love to spar.
Yes. And like Nelson has an extremely low tolerance for puppies and Minnow specifically. So he gives like beautiful corrections. And that's a time that I will let Nelson like speak for himself because I know ultimately that they can't hurt each other.
Yeah.
It's never happened before. They just kind of slap fight, but kind of letting it play out a little bit rather than like continually like standing up for Nelson myself. Like he has to be the one to be like, dude, stop. I don't like this.
Yeah.
And then Minnow's like, oh shit. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think it takes a certain level of knowing what you're looking at.
Yes.
Because like and the motivation between a fight or a correction.
Yes.
You know, like, so for instance, like Snoop, he's a dick sometimes, but like he was like laying on the couch one day and Lumos like walked by close to the couch and Snoop like jumped out and like snapped at him, and Snoop got a big correction for that. And then conversely, they were playing maybe like a week later or something, and Lumos like pounced on him and Snoop got very butthurt about it, and he was like dang, 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 and he like jumped through the air and like gave him like 3 snaps, right? But I'm not going to correct him for that.
No. Yeah.
Like you have to know like what you're looking at. Like in that moment I was laughing because like it was obvious. Like, okay, don't do that, Lumos. And Snoop set a boundary, but like you don't get to set a boundary just laying on the couch because you're annoyed Lumos walked by you.
Yes. Yeah. There's boundaries that you can set and boundaries that like you need to step in as a human and be like, no, you guys are being dumb.
Exactly. What other were some comments that people left? Trying to think of some. Paige, if you can remember any, you can shout some too. What?
Ella created a photo for me.
I'm sure that's great.
Somebody asked on live.
Oh, okay.
I have a male German Shepherd who barks excessively because he gets so excited.
Okay.
Are there any ways of breaking that?
There can be. I mean, it depends on when they're doing it and in what context and why you have the dog, what you're going to do with the dog.
Yeah, like if you're out on a walk and the dog is like out of control barking, like that's definitely a way that you can curb some of that to get the focus a little bit back on you. Or if like sometimes you're playing ball and the dog gets super hyped, that's an example where I may let the vocalization go if it's just vocalization. If it's vocalization and jumping on me and trying to bite my arm, even playfully, that's something you can get control over.
Yeah.
Or barking at the window, barking at things rather than just like barking.
It sounds like, I mean, the dog probably has like some amount of drive, but the drive sounds very leaky. So like either you're not teaching the dog how to properly like manage and self-regulate, because like even dogs with a really insane amount of drive, it's not usually preferable that they're barking when they like hit a certain level. Like if you think about like police dogs in the military, like police dogs specifically, I guess, they allow some of the vocalization because that's part of like the intimidation and like deterrent factor is that the dogs get amped up because the sirens are going and, you know, everybody's yelling and then the dog starts barking and then, you know, the person's like, never mind, I'm coming. Like as soon as that happens. So in those moments, like the uncapped, like leakiness of the drive is like almost something they kind of want, I would imagine in those situations, it appears. But most of the time, if you're doing like personal protection work or even like some military dogs, like you don't want the dog to be loud.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I'm only mentioning these things because they said it was a German Shepherd and that's the genetics that you're working with there. So depending on like, if you're working with a sport dog and you're doing sports with it, like bite work and stuff, then you definitely need to work with people who are experienced with that on teaching you how to like curate that because you don't necessarily want to suppress that drive. You just need to teach the dog how to more appropriately like handle it and self-regulate a little bit better. But with a pet dog, if you just have like a pet German Shepherd who you're not doing any of that with, you need to create contexts within which it's okay to behave that way and not okay. So like you were saying, if it's like you're on a walk, or it's barking out the windows when it sees things, or it's barking at guests when they come over, or inappropriate behaviors, you can definitely suppress and correct those things. And then, like you said, if you're playing fetch or ball, or you're playing with the dog, or they're socializing with other dogs or whatever, and they bark, I wouldn't really worry about it that much.
Yeah. I think shepherds naturally are just very vocal dogs, and it takes a lot to get them to, one, you have to teach them how to settle at some point too.
Yeah.
And not have any stimulation. It takes a while. They're
Yeah.
very vocal dogs.
Yeah.
And I know the sound. We know the sound very well.
Yeah. And they're hit or miss. Like if you're asking like, how do I fix this? Shepherds can be very, it really depends on them individually on what method of correction is going to be effective. Sometimes e-collar corrections can be effective to mitigate the barking. Sometimes they're not effective at all and it can make it worse. So it really depends on the dog individually and figuring out like where's the motivation coming from for the barking, and then what can I do about that, and then on top of that, what correction methods are going to be effective in helping curb it a little bit. But yeah, I think the point you brought up of teaching them how to settle and making them be bored is extremely important.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if they're doing too much enrichment, where
Or
they're doing
it's
the
like-
lick mats and the puzzles and the this and then that. Stop doing
It's an
that.
iPad kid. Like if we're constantly giving our dogs something to do and they're never allowed to be bored, naturally in life they're going to be bored. And when they don't know what to do with that boredom, they get very anxious and like they're like, something's going on. I need to have a job to do. And you're like, no, you don't. You can just like, yes, most of the time I can work you and do things with you, but there are times you need your dog just to settle.
Yep.
Question for Bridget.
Ooh.
From your client, Courtney, who is your therapist? Because the level of mental anguish that my dog brought upon us was wild, and he didn't even blink. Bridget's headphones went flying across the room.
Yes. Thank you,
Who is
Reese.
this?
Reese. The love of my life.
Reese.
I haven't loved, like, I love my boredom trains, but I haven't loved a boredom train like I loved Reese in a long time because of that initial challenge. Yes, he was intense, but it's also so gratifying to work through that. And that itself, like, was just chef's kiss, you know?
Reese did not like me.
No. He didn't.
He did not. I think I'm still on his shit list.
Yeah.
It got better though towards the end, and it worked out because he never really liked me, and I didn't interact with him because that wasn't something that was needed. But then at the end, we used that to our advantage when you were practicing like the stranger danger handling drills and stuff like that. And he was fine. He tolerated me.
Yeah.
At that point, he was like, "I still don't like you, but I'll do it."
Yeah.
She said, "We appreciate you trying, Michelle. You know we truly do."
Listen, if there's anyone who can relate to having a dog who hates people, it's me. So
Yeah.
I don't take offense to it in
Yeah.
any way.
Yeah.
Honestly, dogs that are like super friendly and nice kind of give me the ick. So
I know.
I've talked about this the other day where we'll have like dogs that come bored and we do enrichment with them. And there's been plenty of dogs that are clients of like other trainers. So I've never met them. And I'll go randomly get them out of the kennel one day, do a bunch of stuff with them, hang out with them, take them on a field trip. Never met this dog before in my life. And it's so disgusting to me how they just love me
They just
instantly.
trust you. They're
They
like,
just
"This is
trust me
fine."
instantly. And I'm like, this is crazy
Like
to
somebody
me.
could put you in the back of their white truck. And
Yeah.
be like, I have treats in the car.
Like, I am more astounded and shocked by dogs like that than dogs who are like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, I kind of like that. in a
Yeah,
dog.
I'm like, it's my toxic trait. I've already talked about this, that I like dogs who only like me and hate everybody else. I need that in my life, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always astounded when dogs are super friendly, which is funny because I think societally it's the opposite.
Yeah.
People assume they all should just be super friendly. And then when they come across like a mean one, they're like, who did something to this dog.
Who
It's
abused him.
maybe the dog is just reasonably skeptical of
Yeah.
you because they don't know you.
And dogs are allowed to not enjoy being pet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry to tell you guys that, but like there are some dogs that do not like those interactions. They do not like people in their space.
No.
And if we're trying to change that, the core of the dog, I sometimes think that's really unfair, and breaks the trust with your dog. Like thinking like, I'm not going to let people come up to you.
Yeah.
You're not a toy that people can pass around and like pet. You're my little fur baby, and I won't let anybody come up to you.
Yeah. Oh man. What else?
But yes, my therapist did teach me a nice method to come home and meditate.
I truly, maybe that's something worth talking about. How to have a reasonable, productive amount of disconnect from your job as a dog trainer.
Yeah.
That's so important.
It's been a struggle for me.
I think you're still
Yeah.
in the throes of like
Yeah.
really solidifying it.
Sure.
I feel like you've improved quite a bit though.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. It's hard like when this is your whole life. Like
Yeah.
this job, it's kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Like when we say our whole lives, it's because our line of work is not something that you log out of and then like go home.
Yeah.
Like there's people that have jobs and maybe they'll argue with me, whatever. But like you go to work, you clock in, you get on your computer or whatever it is you do your things, and then you leave it at work and then you come home, right? Like we see dogs every single day. We interact with our own dogs every single day. We have friends with dogs. We have our network of people that we have as like work related contacts are also likely going to become friends over time because of what we do. Like it's so heavily integrated into our like everyday lives that yes, it's a job, but it's hard to separate it as far as that goes. So like you have to make a conscious choice to emotionally be able to like separate yourself from your work with your clients.
Yes. And I felt like you do a very good job of that. But when I was in private lessons, that was so much easier because I could just like go home and I didn't have any dogs in my care. But when they do come to us and like transitional diarrhea happens or a session didn't go so good, I am at home laying awake at night thinking about that.
Yeah.
And like how I can improve it, what I can do the next day. So it does kind of take a mental toll on you. So just
and
learning to disconnect.
I agree with you. And I think that's why I do private lessons and why I only do private lessons is because that was a huge step in me mentally being healthier. Was because I was like, I cannot like the amount of like effort and care and emotion that I do invest into my clients and their dogs, having to physically care for their dogs on top of it was like a whole nother thing where I was like, I can't do it. I know my limitations. I know I'm getting burnt out and it's not sustainable for me. And like, I'm doing private lessons and you are taking your dogs home at the end of the day because I can't do all of it at once.
It feels like a huge responsibility to like care for somebody's dog and make sure they're healthy. We do health checks once a week. We get their weight and we do all of those things like very thoroughly. And I love the way we do them, but it does have some stress involved in it.
Yeah. Well, and you're also dealing with not only your own standards of like how you want to take care of the dogs, but then you're also having to balance that with what the owner's standards are as well of taking care of their dogs. And sometimes that can look very different.
Yes.
And usually it's like stuff to me that I wouldn't even think twice about with my own dog can be a very big deal to people that either are just not that dog savvy or for whatever reason. Like I regularly have clients asking me about like, oh, like my dog is skipping meals. What do I do? So I put toppers and I do this. I just had a client reach out to me about this the other day. And truly, until clients started asking me about this, I'd never thought of this as a concern ever in my own life. My dogs skip meals all the time.
Yeah.
Mine too. Snoopy doesn't.
Yeah.
he would eat himself to death
Yes.
if I let him. But like Cash and Lumos, they skip meals every once in a while. And to me, I'm like, oh, okay. Unless a dog is like dropping weight, they are
Sick,
already
diarrhea.
underweight.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like it's sudden. Like, oh, wow, they haven't eaten for 4 days, 3 days, whatever. Like, that can be concerning. But if they're like skipping breakfast once a week or they're skipping dinner, you know, 2 times a week or whatever, but otherwise they're completely normal. They're pooping, they're peeing, they're drinking water, they're doing everything just the same. Your dog's just self-regulating.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be worried about it. But that, as I described, is like a very big concern for people sometimes. And so when you take that into consideration, when you're caring for somebody else's dog, you may encounter things like with the dog like that, skipping meals every once in a while, or maybe like, oh, like, you know, they were running around outside and they nicked their nose on something, no big deal. But all of these little things you have to relay back to the owners and keep them up to date on, because you have to make sure that they feel very informed about what's going on.
Yes. Like transparency wise, I try to think of what I would want. Like if I drop one of my dogs off for a board and train, and then I try to model that behavior with my clients. And it can be very exhausting, but I definitely would be the same way. If my dog were somewhere for a month, I'd be like, what's going on? What are you doing? Where's my dog at? I didn't see pictures of my dog today.
Yeah.
I am that client. So
I think about it and I'm like, I think I am too. Not in the like, I don't know that I'm as over, like I wouldn't be super like helicoptery. But I would 100% like if you inform me that something went wrong or something happened, I will 100% be that bitch that's kind of hard to deal with. I'll be like, well, how?
yeah.
So like, what are you going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? Like I'm probably going to be a little bit harsh about it a little bit. And so when I have clients that are that way, I'm like, dude, I get it. You know what I mean? Like I totally get this was something that, you know, is a little bit concerning, whatever it might be. But it is funny to kind of look at it as like, oh, I'd probably be the same way.
Yeah. And like it is scary to leave your dog somewhere. That's why you should be so careful with who you leave your dog with.
Yeah.
And ensure that the company or the person you are leaving them with has experience and testimonials that are like very good. Because it's a lot. Like we had 2 dogs recently, and she was like, I've been looking at your training for 2 years now, but I couldn't separate myself from the dogs to leave them for a month. And she was like, I should have done this sooner. This was like such a good idea, and I felt really safe with them in your care. So
No, that's great. I mean, I leave my dogs here.
yeah.
When I go places and board them and stuff. And like, I always tell people like I'm very high standards on who I let handle and take care of my dogs. So if I feel comfortable doing it, then obviously I feel comfortable with them having their dogs do it.
Yeah. And like caring for somebody else's dog, like is a huge amount of responsibility. Like even I love watching Snoop. We love having Snoop over, but like little things from going from my car to the house, I'm like looking around, making sure nobody's out there. Cause like if he got attacked, like
You
that would
just
be
like
it.
have like visions of him getting like eaten by a pit bull like on your
So I carry him from my car to the house because I don't even want to put him in a position where there's any risk of him being hurt.
Yeah.
Because he's very important to you and he's very important to me.
Yeah.
So finding people that are in like kind of like that with you that you can vibe with.
Oh yeah. And that's why I let you watch him.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, nothing's gonna happen to this dog with Bridget around.
Yes. And I have a pet sitter that I hire, and I will let her watch all of my dogs except for one, because it's not even aggressiveness. It's just like food drive wise. Like the videos she sends me, she watched one of my dogs recently, the one that I never let her watch, and Sunday was unhinged. She's trying to send a cutesy video, and Sunday's just jumping in the air, like dancing around for her food. And it just takes so much control and structure to make sure Sunday doesn't like eat herself to death.
That's so funny.
So she comes here.
Oh man. Bless her. Bless her heart.
Yeah.
What else? What else we got here?
We got any more questions?
Anything?
Come on, guys.
There's just comments on what you guys have been saying.
Oh, really? Are they disagreeing with us? Tell us.
One time, I went on a Jeff Gelman podcast with his girlfriend, and I asked a question, and he made me feel so stupid.
What? What'd you ask him?
I was like, how do you, like, I was dealing with a dog at the time that, like, it was very hard to communicate with the owner what to do. And he was like, well, you know, if you watched my course and you bought my course, then you'd know more. And I was like, oh.
Why'd you do the Q&As if you're going to tell people
I know.
to go to the course?
Yeah. But, you know, he's a smart man. I get it.
Jeff, we're Jeff stans here.
Yeah,
That's
we
fine.
love Jeff.
I like Joelle too.
Yes, Jeff and Joelle stand.
Joelle's a bad bitch.
Yeah, she is.
But actually, he just posted something really funny
I know.
today. Did you see?
I really want to talk about that.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
They don't. That's so funny.
When Joelle makes Jeff wear that wig.
I know. Oh man. No, the meme was how do force-free trainers rehab behavioral dogs or aggressive dogs or something like that. And then it was the Timothy Chalamet meme that was like, they don't.
No, they don't. I
They
think
really
there's
don't.
like a skill level that only positive reinforcement or force-free trainers can get to, and then they're shit out of luck.
Yeah.
That's why we get so many dogs coming from force-free places.
So many. Well, and it was funny because then Kayla, our manager, I showed it to her and we were dying, and she was like, that's why we don't do consultations.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, those are the trainers that need to do consultations because they need to know if they're going to be able to train your dog or not. She's like, when people call and they sign up for training, she's like, they'll always ask about consultations. Do we need a consult? And I always tell them, like, not to sound, for lack of a better word, like, no, we don't need a consult because I'm 100% confident no matter your issue, we're going to be able to help your dog.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Let's hear them.
Who are some of your more inspiring trainers, and who do you look up to when it comes to big names?
Ooh, Michael Ellis, Ivan
Is,
Balabanov.
yeah.
Those
Michael
are the two
Ellis,
that I can think of right off the top of my head.
very talented. I've watched how to use your dog or train your dog with food like so many times, and I credit a lot of like my skill to him.
Yeah.
You
Who
like
else?
Tom Davis?
Stop it.
Tom Davis.
If you say his name 3 times, he's gonna appear.
appears.
Who else? Oh, there's I always forget his name.
We love Jeff and Joelle. We already said that.
I'm gonna look it up.
Who else?
I like watching videos from, what is his name? Mike Jones
Mm-hmm.
with Primal K9.
Yes.
And then I've already mentioned him, K9 Mike. I like him too. That's his Instagram handle. What's his name? Mike Nesbeth. Grassroots K9.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. He's got some good videos. Who else? I'm trying to think of like big names that I like really like.
There's a lot of podcasts that I listen to about dogs. What's that guy's name? That we often communicate with. Adam, I want to say. I really like his content.
Adam?
Let me see. Adam Flack Dog Training. I think his advice is really cool.
What's his podcast?
I think he has a podcast. Well, let me see. What is he posts? He posts a lot of Instagram, and they hit.
Okay.
The posts hit. I'm like,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll have to look him up. I don't think I even know who that is.
Yeah. And I like the way he explains things. I like the way that he does things. And Tyler Muto.
Oh yeah.
I am a huge
Tyler
fan.
Muto. I like him a lot. And then oh gosh, what's his name? Pat Stewart.
Yeah.
I like Pat Stewart.
Yeah, I love Pat Stewart. I listen to the podcast. I can't remember what it's called, but
I gotta find some lady trainers out there.
I know.
We're listing a bunch of men,
Yeah.
which is fine. They're very good at what they do. I'm just trying to think of if there's any women off the top of my... Actually, I can't think of a woman, and I can't remember her name.
A woman? Hillary Clinton?
God, no.
Name a woman.
Not
For
her.
$5.
Where... Oh, gosh, what is her name? She's extremely successful in... in like protection sports. I can't think of her name. Oh man, this is gonna bother me.
What if we just made up names? I like Kelly.
Right.
Suzanne. Suzanne is like my top inspiration.
Oh, who's...
Malamore
Oh.
mother.
Maybe. I'd have to know more about her.
Yeah.
I've only seen... Does she have a bunch of TikTok videos? Whoever said that. Is she real famous on TikTok? Because I think... yeah. I think that's who you're talking about. Who's the guy from Tar Heel K9?
Yeah. That's the guy I was thinking about.
I like him too.
Yeah.
I always forget his name.
He's really cool.
Don't ask me that on a podcast.
Yes. We do.
Why or why not?
I was really trying to keep this PC, okay?
Just
And
read the book. His book.
I feel like he does a lot of shitting on everybody else and not a lot of like just staying in his own lane and doing what he does.
Yeah.
At least from what like I see on social media. Like he is like the hub and the mecca of like expose everybody. All these people suck. All these people are terrible. You balance trainers don't know what you're doing. It's just a lot of negativity for me.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say or comment about his dog training per se because I've never seen it in person. I'm sure it probably is fine. But like as far as his persona and like who he is, it's just a lot of negativity for me.
It is.
That's my thing. I like following people that just mind their fucking business and train dogs.
Yeah. And don't get into a lot of the drama.
Yeah, that's really it for me. I like Denise Fenzi.
Yes, I do like Denise.
I like Denise.
I think she knows her shit.
She knows her shit. She also like she's so smart. She has a lot of really interesting takes on things. She's force-free, but she recognizes that there's certain limitations to that. She just chooses to do it that way. She sees the value, I think. Maybe she would say I'm wrong, but it appears that she sees the value in punishment at times in dog training. She just prefers not to do it herself.
Yes.
But yeah, I like Denise.
Yeah.
I like Denise. This is gonna drive me crazy to not remember what this girl's name
I
is.
always like Lake Erie dog training. I think they're really inspiring, especially because they do focus a lot on nutrition. And I think their method, and I love the way they do things, just letting the dogs run around on their property, super inspiring.
Mia Skogster. That's who it is. Yeah, she's a IGP world champion with 2 separate dogs.
Okay.
And a 6-time world champion medalist. She's a really good dog trainer.
Yeah.
So she's another woman that's really cool. I'm looking through my Instagram to see if there's anybody else that I can think of. I think that's about Caesar, of course.
Caesar.
The Monks of New Skeet, they're kind of fun. I like them. I like the monks.
Their books are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Good read.
Mm-hmm. Yep. K9 Decoded.
Yeah.
She's cool. Is she a dog trainer?
I don't know.
Or is she just like an animal behaviorist, like science lady?
I don't know. I think she's a dog trainer.
Um,
She's very smart. I think she has her PhD.
yeah, she's a doctor. Yeah, she is a dog trainer. She's another one that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
She goes head to head with all these force-free people that always throw out the like, oh, but the science says and the studies say, and she's like, do
actually,
they? Do they? Do
Yeah.
they? Yeah. Oh, Blake Rodriguez.
mm-hmm.
He's
Dream
another
come
good one.
true.
Yeah, Dream
Yeah.
Come True K9. He's another good one. I feel like he's gotten a little bit more bold in the last couple years about being like correcting dogs.
Yeah.
I feel like he was kind of like initially kind of one of those trainers that tried to appeal a little bit more and be a little bit more soft about it. But I think now that we're seeing like that there's value in just being like open and blunt and honest, I think that he's kind of started to be that way as well.
I have a lot of respect for trainers like that.
Mm-hmm. Who else? Anybody else on here?
We're kind of very selective about like what content, like, or at least I am with what content I'm absorbing, because early on in my dog training career, there's so much that you're like looking at so many different pieces and it can be really confusing.
Yeah.
So finding people that just align with what you feel and think.
Yeah.
And even maybe some that don't, like, that are force free.
Yeah, like I've always found it funny that like whether it's like politically or anything like that, people are always like, oh, you should look who people are following on their social media, and if they're following these people, trying to cut them out of your lives. Like, I follow all of the people that I don't like or disagree with, because I don't want to be in an echo chamber all the time.
Yes, yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go to their content and be like, oh, I'm going to absorb this and I'm going to get confused from all these different things. I agree with you that in the beginning, when you're very impressionable as like a trainer, you need to be a little bit careful because it can be easy to get swayed like one way or the other. You need to absorb media like very intentionally. But to say that like just because you follow somebody means you like agree with everything they're doing is crazy to me. Yeah. Like, I follow Tom Davis, Zach George, a number of force-free people, Sharon Pryor. Don't like Sharon Pryor. She's a liar. Like, all of these people where if you looked at my following, you'd be like, oh no. Yeah. Oh no. But it's just because I like to be up to date on
the devil's
things.
Advocate. It's always good to have like the perspective that's like,
know your enemy.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Know what's going on out there. Gotta have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world. Cool. Was there another question that we didn't get to? I don't remember. I thought you said there was two. Maybe you asked both of them. Cool. Well, last call, guys, if anyone's still out there.
Is anybody out there?
Is anybody out there?
Can you hear me?
Who else? I think I mentioned most of the people. Yeah. Bridget, do you have any last thoughts?
I have no thoughts in my brain right now.
You're sufficiently exhausted.
Yes.
Me too.
I've been asking about a few trainers, but we have to end it, so you'll have to maybe
Just say their names real fast.
Oh, there's a ton.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Yeah.
Rep them out.
Just rep them out. We'll say it. We'll do a quick yes or no.
So you guys are gonna have to.
Oh, damn.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to look at it and we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right, guys.
Hi from Argentina.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Nice to have you. It's probably a lot warmer down there.
Yeah. Help us.
Right.
Help
Because
us.
there's like 8 inches of snow outside.
Can I come stay with you?
Bye.
Bye.